PSC. With me tonight, to my right and to your left, is Vice Chair of the Commission, John Clay. To my left and your right is Caroline Pitt Clark, Commissioner of this Commission. I am also accompanied here this evening by several members of the PSC staff who are present to aid in this public hearing and who are available to direct you if you need to find the facilities and that sort of thing, and certainly to try to answer any procedural questions that you might have at the conclusion of the hearing. Let me take just a second and ask all members of the PSC staff that are currently in the hearing room to stand and to raise your hand as well, because a couple are in the back standing. If you stand and raise your hand, these are all folks with the PSC, so you might eyeball them and see what they look like, and if you have a question afterwards, you can maybe come up to this part of the hearing room and seek one of them out. We're here this evening for the purpose of taking public comment on the application of the Kentucky American Water Company to construct a 20 million gallon per day water treatment plant on the Kentucky River in Owen County and about 30 miles of transmission main through Owen, Franklin, Scott, and Fayette counties to connect to Kentucky American's system in Lexington. This hearing is being held as part of the PSC's consideration of Kentucky American's application to obtain a certificate of public convenience and necessity for this project. The case number is 2007-00134. This is the last of 3 such public meetings. We held a meeting in Owenton Monday evening, and we were in Lexington at Dunbar High School last evening. We understand that this proposed project has generated some controversy, and we also recognize that this can be an emotional issue on which there can be and are honest differences. We trust that everyone here this evening will present their opinions in a respectful manner and respect the right of those with differing views to be heard. Now let me provide you with some background on how we have arrived at this point in the process, and then I'll explain how we will proceed with this evening's public hearing. The question before the Commission today is not a new one. In November 1993, the Kentucky PSC opened an investigation into the future water supply needs of the Kentucky American Water Company. The Commission ordered the company to take necessary and appropriate measures to obtain sources of supply to serve the needs of its customers through the year 2020. Since that time, Kentucky American has examined a number of options, including the possibility of bringing water by pipeline from the Louisville Water Company. At various times and for various reasons, the Louisville pipeline and other options have been discussed, but none of them were formally submitted to the PSC for its approval. The proposal before us currently, while it has been the subject of public discussion for some time, did not come before the PSC as a formal proposal until earlier this year. It calls for a treatment plant on Pool 3 of the Kentucky River, just downstream from the Franklin County line. The pipeline then follows State Routes 2919 and 1262, at times roughly paralleling Elkhorn Creek to the intersection of State Route 1262 and US 460. It then follows US 460 into Scott County until the junction with Ironworks Pike, which is State Route 1973, crosses into Fayette County and connects to the existing Kentucky American Water Company system at Newtown Pike. Kentucky American estimates the total cost of the project to be approximately $160 million. That is the proposal before us currently. Under Kentucky law, the PSC must determine that the public's convenience and necessity require construction of the project. The Commission may approve, reject, or modify the company's proposal. The Commission also examines whether the proposed facility will result in a wasteful duplication of services or excessive investment in physical facilities. Now let me explain how we will proceed this evening in hearing your views on the subject. Obviously, we are a commission of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and it is our desire as a public agency to listen to you, the members of the public. Therefore, there will be no presentations by Kentucky American or any of the other parties to this case, nor will there be any question and answer period involving the parties. The Commission will be taking sworn testimony from them in a forthcoming evidentiary hearing. Allowing questions and answers on the record at this, as part of this meeting creates the potential for procedural problems later in the process. However, representatives of Kentucky American have agreed to remain after the conclusion of public comments to meet informally with anyone who has any individual questions they wish the company to address. Now, Kentucky American is not required to do this. They have graciously agreed to do it, and certainly if you have questions, I encourage you to avail yourself of that opportunity. We have also invited representatives of the other parties to remain as well to answer any questions that you might have of them on an informal basis. Now, those of you wishing to speak should have indicated your intention to do so when you signed in out the front this evening. If you have not signed in, please do so, whether or not you intend to speak, so that we may have a complete record of the proceeding and so that we may have complete and full knowledge of who's here this evening. Now, based upon the number of people who have indicated a desire to speak, and there are several pages, and I suspect probably there will be more as the evening progresses, we're going to allow 3 minutes per speaker, as we did in Owenston and in Lexington last night, so that everyone has the opportunity to be heard. Our timekeeper, Mr. Rucher, who's sitting over here, will let you know when you have a minute remaining and when your time is up. Now, when your 3 minutes is up, I will let you know that as soon as I possibly can and give you an opportunity to summarize your position so that you're not stopped in mid-sentence. I don't want to be unfair to anybody, but by the same token, please understand that there are others who wish to speak, and we can't just make it an open-ended process, so we are going to limit it to 3 minutes. Those of you who do not wish to speak may submit comments in writing, and we have comment forms available out front. You may turn those in tonight to a member of the PSC staff or mail or fax them to the PSC. The address and phone number are on the forms, and you may also submit comments by email through our website, which is psc.ky.gov. Now, as you can see, or maybe you can see, maybe you can't, we have some cameras throughout the courtroom here, hearing room. This meeting is being videotaped, and the tape will be available on our website. A summary of the public comments that are received this evening will be prepared for us for our review and become a part of the case record, which will also be available on the website. Now, I can't tell you when that'll be, but it should be within just hopefully a few days following conclusion of tonight's hearing. All written comments will be entered into the case record. Written comments will be accepted through the date of the formal evidentiary hearing in this case. Now, that hearing, during which Kentucky American and the other parties will present their cases to the PSC and be subject to cross-examination, will begin at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday, November 26, at the PSC offices at 211 Sauer Boulevard in Frankfort, and certainly it is open to the public. I should note that this date is a postponement from the original schedule. The PSC delayed the hearing in order to allow as complete a review as possible within a reasonable time frame of the proposal by the Louisville Water Company to supply Kentucky American water through a pipeline from its treatment plants on the Ohio River in Jefferson County. Now, two things that are very important to keep in mind before we begin, and I would ask you, if you don't hear another thing I say, listen to this. First of all, because the PSC acts in a quasi-judicial capacity and commissioners must rule on the Kentucky American application, we cannot answer any questions pertaining to the substance of this case. However, questions that you raise during this meeting may well be of assistance to the PSC and staff as we prepare for the evidentiary hearing. And PSC staff will be available after the public comments are concluded to answer any questions that you may have regarding procedural matters in the case. Secondly, the PSC can consider only comments on matters that are before us and over which we have the authority to review. The principal issue before us is whether construction of the proposed plant and pipeline is a matter of public convenience and necessity. We have no authority whatsoever over environmental matters or condemnation proceedings, whether they involve private or public lands. Therefore, I would encourage you to focus your comments only on the issues over which this Commission has jurisdiction. Comments on matters falling outside of our authority and jurisdiction cannot be considered by us as we reach our decision in this case. Now, when you come up to speak, I would ask that you please state your name and place of residence. And again, please keep your comments to the allotted time so that others may have the opportunity to address the commission. As you can see, the place is almost full, and as I said before, that there are multiple scores of people that have expressed a desire to speak. So I'm going to be a somewhat difficult taskmaster this evening with regard to timing. I don't intend at all to be rude, and please, if I give you the hook, don't take it that way. I'm just trying to protect your friend and neighbor so that they might have an adequate opportunity to address the commission as well. Now, a couple of sort of housekeeping matters. Most of us nowadays carry cell phones, and I would ask you that if you have a cell phone in your pocket or your purse, that you either de-energize that or put it on mute or on vibrate so that in the middle of the hearing we're not interrupted. This is a small hearing room, and any interruptions or any noise of any kind, like a ringing cell phone or something like that, can be very distracting to us and to everyone. And so we would ask that you please consider that in the course of the evening. As is my custom in conducting these public hearings, and I've conducted several of them on various issues throughout the state, I always allow and permit any elected officials that are present in the hearing room to address the commission first. Many times elected officials say something that their constituents wish to respond to or wish to comment on, and so I do know that Representative Carl Rollins is in the hearing room, and I think he has expressed a desire to speak. Representative Rollins, do you in fact wish to speak? Thank you. Why don't you come forward to the microphone here, and if you would, sir, identify yourself for the record and tell us where you live, and then go ahead.
My name is Carl Rollins. I live in Midway on 405 Marywood Drive. I have a unique perspective, I think, I bring to this issue. I live in Midway. I represent the 56th district. No matter which way you go, you're coming through my district. Kentucky American has tried before to come through my district when I was on the fiscal court and representing Midway and I-64. A couple of things. You have a tough job, and I appreciate your service. I know your charge is to make sure ratepayers get a fair deal and that our money is invested wisely, and because we're going to eventually pay for whatever decision's made. And I also know that you're charged with making sure we have an adequate supply of water. I commend Kentucky American for being persistent in trying to find some solution to this, and especially I commend the task force that's worked on this recently. But a couple of things. First of all, I want to make sure you understand when Kentucky American tried to come down I-64 before, it was not I-64 all the way to Lexington. It was I-64 until you got close to Midway. And then they left the interstate and came through prime horse farm country. So I took the brunt of that and got to deal with a lot of my constituents as magistrate. And that made the problem much more difficult when you start going through any kind of prime farmland. And that's kind of the issue here today. I think in northern Franklin County, which I represent now as a state representative, it's prime farmland. It's great farmland, and it's going to be disrupted if the pipeline comes through there. My primary concern, and as I say, I've been involved with this issue for a while, is if you go to the Kentucky River, I don't care where you go on the Kentucky River and build another water plant, you've still got one single source of water. You may be in a different pool, but there's only so much water in the Kentucky River. It makes sense to me to find some other source of water. The best and biggest source close to us, I believe, is the Ohio River. I feel actually pretty positive that the Louisville Water Company, a public entity, has come forward and agreed to use some of their excess capacity to help supply Kentucky American. And I also understand Kentucky American's argument that they want to build a water plant and control the process from start to finish. But I would urge you to, for future, to consider the fact that Louisville represents a completely different water source, which just in my mind, and I'm not, I'm not an engineer, I don't know these things, but that makes sense to me. You have a separate water source, And I fully believe that in the future, those regions of our country that have adequate water will be the regions that thrive. So we've got...
You just been dinged, but go ahead and finish.
No action is not an option, is what I was going to say. Some action has to be taken. So, we value your judgment, and hopefully something positive will come from this. But just want to give you my perspective on it.
Thank you, Representative Rollins, very much. Okay, the first person from the general public to speak is Don Sturgeon.
My name is Don Sturgeon. I live in Indian Hills here in Frankfort. I'm the 3rd District Magistrate on the Franklin County Fiscal Court, and I was the one that introduced the resolution opposing the pipeline through Franklin County. My constituents have environmental concerns, which are fine. My main concern is economic, and I still believe that in order, according to the study that was made in the 1990s, the Ohio River is the ultimate answer for water for central Kentucky. In order for Kentucky American to do that, they will have to build 2 pipelines. I believe 1 pipeline from Louisville is much cheaper than 2 pipelines. I've been to 2 or 3 meetings on water, and at one held at Wilmore, Kentucky American gave us a presentation of an overlay, and it had different colored maps and things on it. And one thing that struck my mind at that time was the black lines on the overlay represented the feeder lines that Kentucky American has to central Kentucky. And me being a history teacher for 42 years, I kept thinking a German-owned private company is going to have a monopoly on the control of the water in central Kentucky. And after teaching history for 42 years, I never really read anything really good about a monopoly. And so therefore, I'm opposed to this.
Thank you, Mr. Sturgeon. And I failed to ask, and I should have done this, if I missed any elected officials. I know Mr. Sturgeon is an elected official. Are there any other elected officials in the room that I might have passed over that would like to speak to the commission before we proceed? Okay. Then the next person is Lee Troutwine.
Members of the Public Service Commission, my name is Lee Troutwine, and I live in God's country. And if there's any sinners out there that don't know where that is, that's Peaks Mill. What you're seeing here, and I'm speaking of me, I'm an old worn-out bureaucrat. So I know what you're going through during these hearings, and I'll try to make my comments as brief and blunt as possible. This project, as proposed by Kentucky American Water Company, is quite frankly, and due to lack of better terminology, a crock of, designed to profit the few at the expense of the many being the good citizens of this great Commonwealth of Kentucky. Now, Louisville Water does not have the slick spin doctors, quote, spokesman, that Kentucky American has. So they might be a little slow getting their statement out. But in the Peaks Mill vernacular, it don't take no mental heavyweight to add up all the statistics and facts and come up with, number 1, they can provide more water, number 2, less damage to the environment, number 3, better service to their customers, and number 4, at less cost to all concerned. Kentucky American's motto should be, service is secondary, profit is primary. Stick with a real, and let me emphasize the word real, Kentucky American company, Louisville Water. Thank you very much.
All right, Fran Pinkston is our next speaker.
for allowing me this opportunity to speak. My name is Fran Pinkston, and I live at 3393 Jones Lane, which is on the Elkhorn Creek at the historic Schweitzer Covered Bridge. I own the property where Kentucky American proposes to cross the Elkhorn. My home is a log cabin constructed in 1792, according to the state historian. It began as a sawmill with the timber cut on site to construct the original cabin. It later became a grist mill, then many years later a private residence. It was known as the Old Schweitzer Cabin, where the family after whom the community is named lived. It has been added on to in the 1800s, the 1900s, and remodeled in this century, but the original structure still stands and is the heart of my home. The mill was powered by Jones Lane Branch, which runs across the front of my property and within the 90-foot construction easement, and whose stacked stone walls will be severely impacted by the proposed pipeline. Every weekend when the weather's warm, my family and friends spend the days sitting or floating in the creek with the covered bridge in sight. We float in the very spot where they proposed to place the pipeline. The quiet enjoyment of my property will be disrupted or destroyed for years to come if this proposed pipeline is approved. Even today, Kentucky American has their contractors performing geotechnical drilling at the end of my driveway, although they've never approached me or obtained permission to enter my property. Yes, I oppose this plan. I don't want them to destroy the beauty and quiet of my home and property, but I oppose the plan for broader reasons. The construction of this 30.6-mile pipeline through Scott, Franklin, and Owen counties is an expensive, unsightly scar in some of the most beautiful areas of central Kentucky, and it's simply bad public policy. The current estimate of $165 million is far too expensive for a short-term patch to the water supply problem. Kentucky American admits that this will have to be supplemented within 10 years with an additional pipeline to extend from Pool 3 to the Ohio River to the north. The cost for that portion of the project has yet to be disclosed, and the ratepayers will be obligated, regardless of cost, to continue, because in times of severe drought or environmental catastrophe, the Kentucky River will not have the necessary volume to provide for central Kentucky's demand for water, which Kentucky American readily admits, which would necessitate the extension of the line to the Ohio. The much more feasible and available option for the long-term demand is to extend the pipeline from the Louisville Water Company in Shelbyville for an estimated $56 million. One of the criterion that the Public Service Commission examines is the necessity. It is clearly not necessary to construct the plant at Pool 3 when there is already an underutilized plant on the Ohio River and a public utility that is willing and able to provide the excess capacity with a tie-in available less than 50 miles away. Kentucky American paid $7.6 billion for American Water Works in 2003, which was approximately 3 times their book value. Now it's for sale, and they are driven to increase the value of their infrastructure at whatever cost to boost their profit. They are guaranteed a double-digit return on their investment. We were asked at the Franklin County Fiscal Court meeting, where the resolution opposing this pipeline was introduced, "Neighbor, can you buy your brother a drink?"
Go ahead and finish.
Each one of us would gladly say yes. Every person has the right to clean and affordable water. That right should not be controlled by a multinational corporation. It should be safeguarded by the public and guided by sound public policy. The cost of providing water should not be tied to RWE's share price or Kentucky American's profit. It should be tied to protecting the needs of the consumers to provide a safe, long-term solution to the citizens of Central Kentucky. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next speaker is Jeff Pinkerton.
I was asked, my name is Jeff Pinkerton. I live in the Crestwood neighborhood in Frankfort, Kentucky. And I was asked to read a letter by Rebecca Cannon. She wrote it on July 19th, 2007. She was in an auto accident, so she can't be here. Quote, "Many of our neighbors are being asked by Kentucky American Water Company to sign a contract to convey a permanent easement to them so they can build a 30.6-mile pipeline from southern Owen County to northern Fayette County. A permanent right-of-way and easement has the same legal description as if you sold it. The difference is that you, as owner, still pay the taxes. Why does the company want to run a 42-inch water line along the same route as the Georgetown water line? In my opinion, this project is more about building stockholder wealth than it is about providing the ratepayers and taxpayers with good, clean water at a reasonable price. Construction of a pipeline of this size would be a major disruption in the short term and a major annoyance in the long run. Local traffic will be rerouted, and an unsightly scar on our rural roads would be evident for years to come. This company wants to dig a trench 8 feet deep and 4 feet wide to lay this huge pipeline. The company will take a 90-foot temporary construction easement, clearing everything in its path, and will settle upon a 30-foot permanent easement. Property owners will never be able to build on top of the pipeline. A new water treatment plant is proposed to be built on the Kentucky River. Company officials say that this project will cost the taxpayers $165 million. There are so many cons to this pipeline and very few pros. An alternative water line will meet the water supply needs at less cost and without destroying historical Ironworks Road and other historical roads here in central Kentucky. I think a better alternative exists. Just last week, in June, the president of the Louisville Water Company presented to the Lexington-Fayette-Irving County Council and offered to build a pipeline to the Kentucky 53 exit on I-64 and sell Kentucky American Water Company as much water as they could need. Kentucky American could then run its pipeline along I-64, hooking into this, quote, unlimited, unquote, supply of water. Duplication of a facility would be avoided because a water treatment plant would not have to be built under the Louisville Water Company proposal. They have excess plant capacity. According to the Louisville Water Company, the cost to construct this pipeline is only $56 million. The cost to construct the pipeline Kentucky American proposes is $165 million. The cost of the Louisville pipeline is $56 million. The difference is $109 million. Why should the customer be asked to pay so much more in construction costs for the same amount of water? A decade ago, Kentucky American negotiated and signed a contract with the Louisville Water Company to buy treated water from them and sell it to their customers, solving the water supply deficit in central Kentucky. They were to build the pipeline from Louisville to Lexington. And then you know what happened earlier. Close quote.
Thank you very much. All right, Chris Schindler.
My name is Chris Schindler. I live on the Franklin-Owen County line, and I spoke in front of you all on Monday in Owen County, and tonight I spoke as a cause member. Tonight I am speaking as a representative of Envision Franklin County, of which I'm on the executive board of Envision. We're a citizens group that started about 3.5 years ago in Franklin County. Our goals, and we have a great group of people. We're focused on the whole range of community well-being. We are interested in helping and have promoted through various seminars and other educational opportunities, things like walkable communities, different types of development zoned, different types of zoning that provides for livable communities that are healthy for folks, and have been involved in the bike and walk trail effort. And we've also been extensively involved in working on the comprehensive plan, which is the vision for Frankfort. So as a cause, as an Envision Franklin County representative, I'd like to make the following comments. Envision is concerned about this proposal because of the potential for sprawl along the pipeline route. The possibility of having 1.5 acre lots along the route, because tap-ins will be allowed for major subdivisions, is not in the sights of the current comprehensive plan. That creates a suburbia, and not what the comprehensive plan has charted out for our community. The comprehensive plan, just to back up, is a community effort that involved folks from all facets of the community to lay out what we would like to see in Franklin County, and sprawl runs contrary to goals 1 and 2 of the comprehensive plan, growing by design. Large increases in residential growth are going to create too much traffic on US 127 and other rural roads. And this goes against Goal 3 of the comprehensive plan, which is use infrastructure as a planning tool. On average, sprawl, the cost of community services for residential growth is about $1.15 for every dollar that's brought in. The farther you get away from city limits with subdivisions, the larger the cost for services. The bottom line is the more you pay out using tax monies, the bottom line is you pay out more using our tax money than the revenue you bring in for this residential growth. And this does not make fiscal sense. We can't afford it. This runs contrary to goal number 4 of newly adopted goal number 4 of our comprehensive plan, which is promote economic health.
You would please just summarize.
The conclusion that we taxpayers are going to pay the fiscal and environmental costs which have not been studied or considered. The environmental destruction of our prized Elkhorn Creek will do nothing for economic development or tourism or the environmental health of Frankfort. The beautiful vistas of northern Franklin County will not recover from this, nor will the years and years of community planning that have gone into shaping what we would like Franklin County to shape will be aided by this pipeline. It's going to hijack those efforts and all those years and all that community input. So I'm opposed to the pipeline. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, the next speaker is Jim Lear.
Hi,
Hi, Mr. Lear.
I'm Jim Lear, and I live on the Swords Road, and the farm fronts on Orangework. It's been a family farm for 150 years, which I operate. The proposed water line is 4,150 feet, and that's all the way across the farm. And there's a pond within 50 feet of the water line, which is used for water and livestock and irrigation. And there's a spring in the pond that was found back in the drought during the 30s. That's almost 80 years. And family members range from 3 to 93. And it's been a family farm for 150 years, and we plan on keeping it that way. We now have a 3-inch Georgetown water line, a South Central Bell line, and now the proposed Kentucky American water line. Did you ever want to dig a post hole? You can't do it. You got to call Bud. That's before you dig. And now they'll send out a man within 3 working days from the water company and the telephone company. And if it's Kentucky American water, it has to go through Germany and then back again. And now we have to give up the 90 feet for the water line. And guess who pays the taxes on the proposed right-of-way? The landowner. And if you ever build a new house, you take the topsoil off and you put it to the side. And then when everything's done, you put the topsoil back on. There's no way that the land where the 30-foot will be, it'll take years to get it back. And to my knowledge, there's never been a geological survey done in the area. And by all means, that needs to be done. Because there's 2 streams that run through the farm, and all of a sudden the water drops into a sinkhole. And we don't know what the impact of digging the 8-foot deep or 30-foot inch wide will be. So before you make a decision, take everything into account. Please don't rush the decision, but make the right decision. Thank you.
Mr. Lear, How many acres is your farm?
175.
175, okay, thank you. Okay, Betty Bashir.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I am here today in opposition to the Kentucky American Water Company's intent to construct a water pipeline from Pool 3 of the Kentucky River to Lexington. This proposed pipeline would run through what I feel is some of the most beautiful and scenic countryside in central Kentucky. What makes the area so scenic? It's the Pfeiffer Fish Hatchery, Peaks Mill, the Elkhorn Creek, Schweitzer Covered Bridge, and the farms along Ironworks Pike. I'm kind of nervous.
You're doing
As
fine.
a member of CAUSE, I've tried to educate myself and others about the issues involved in a reliable water supply for central Kentucky. I continue to be quite concerned about the environmental impact of their plan. Besides just feeling that it is beautiful countryside, I learned that northern Franklin County is also host to federally endangered plants. The proposed route goes by 4 significant populations of bronze rockcress, as well as a designated critical habitat area established by the Federal Fish and Wildlife Agency. This habitat is critical for the long-term survival of the species. The thing that puts these plants at risk is loss of habitat and exotic species coming in after the ground has been disturbed. This plant is presently found only in Kentucky and Tennessee, and the majority of the Kentucky population in Franklin County. The route goes by or through populations of 2 other rare plant species unique to the area, globe bladderpod and Svenson's wild rye. This proposed route goes through a section of the Elkhorn Creek that is host to a mussel that is considered threatened by the Kentucky Nature Preserves Commission. The route also goes through other federally endangered designated critical habitat areas, including that for the northern leopard frog and the Cobber moorhead. The route goes through priority watersheds identified by the Division of Water, including the source water protection area for Georgetown's Royal Springs and the South Elkhorn Creek. In summary, the proposed pipeline route will cross over more than 20 streams, impact critical habitat areas, threaten endangered species, and jeopardize priority watersheds. It is ludicrous to believe that the impact is minimal to the public and the environment, as stated by Kentucky American Water in their application for a nationwide permit through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I feel we have the means and the ability to supply water to central Kentucky without destroying the very things that make our community such a wonderful place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bashir. All right, Brian Geyer. You feel like we're becoming old friends with some of you folks. Nice to see you again, Mr. Geyer.
Nice to be here. My name is Brian Geyer. I live in Franklin County. I have a letter this time. To me, this debate is over. It's been clearly shown that this plan does not have the best interest of the communities of this region in mind, and we have an alternative on the horizon, which can not only provide Lexington's growing businesses with virtually unlimited water, but can do so in a timely way that will cost less and respect northern Franklin County. Thanks to these public hearings, we all know that this plan is designed in large part to make money for Kentucky American. We know the plan lowballs the estimated cost to ratepayers by leaving out the essential Phase 2 that would hook this plant up to the Ohio River, which is the point. I, for one, am suspicious that even the money they say they will invest today will eventually come out of our pockets, that in 2 or 3 years they will come before you requesting rate hikes, saying, we invested and now we need to recover. This is the part that threatens to be inconvenient. Right now, every other American Water subsidiary is working it this way. Illinois American Water has a 60% increase before their commission, a request the mayor is calling, quote, unbelievable. 26% in Iowa American Water, 16% by Pennsylvania American Water, Indiana, California. Everywhere the line is the same. We invested, we need to recover. Everywhere American Water is negotiating just how much they can suck from people's pockets, which will ultimately go to RWE upon the sale. This pipeline and the rush to get it is all part of the plan. Now, here's the part about necessity. Kentucky American and supporters would have us believe that if we don't approve this pipeline, we face possible mandatory shutoffs of businesses, and that they won't have enough water in time for the equestrian games, creating an embarrassment for the region. we are to feel guilty for denying our neighbors a drink or for risking looking like hicks. The irony is that Kentucky American itself is holding this process up. If Kentucky American would respect the concerns of this community and admit the profit motive in their proposal, they could get on with enacting the alternative, which we're already talking about. Louisville's at the table waiting. They would have us believe that Kentucky American would have us believe that it is our own concerns and democratic processes that are slowing this down and threatening the economic health of Lexington. But it is their own reluctance to relinquish their plan that is holding this up and threatening the region with uncertainty. But they continue to push. The real reason to rush through this process is that a thorough investigation into the actual economics of the plan will reveal just how bad it is. I've been told that it doesn't matter what we say. Even though we've won the debate, almost embarrassingly, I've been told that the reality is that KW is a big business who's made enough contributions to campaigns in this state and who now have friends of friends or friends of friends at all levels that essentially democratic debate is dead, that the profits have been counted and the decision has been made. So please, prove me wrong. Let me know that we live in a community where voices and visions have some teeth. Say no, investigate, and openly and equally consider the alternative.
Okay, the next speaker is Don Hessel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. I'm Don Hassel, and I'm from Lexington. While I'm an employee of the Bluegrass Area Development District, I also serve as the General Manager of the Bluegrass Water Supply Commission. The Water Commission supports the petition of the Kentucky American Water Company as it relates to that company's plans involving a Pool 3 water treatment plant and a potable water transmission line from that plant to connect with the Kentucky American Water Distribution Network in north central Fayette County. While this evening's introductory comments related to Kentucky American's plans to construct a 20 million gallon per day water treatment plant on Pool 3, we fully expect that the initial capacity of that treatment plant will be 25 million gallons per day. This is so because the Bluegrass Water Supply Commission anticipates the purchase of 20% equity ownership in both the Pool 3 water treatment plant and the 30-mile water transmission line. In other words, the BWSC expects to co-own these facilities with Kentucky American. Early year beneficiaries, in addition to Kentucky American's customers in its 7-county service area, are customers of the following municipal water systems: Winchester plus 1 rural water utility, Nicholasville plus 2 rural water utilities, Paris plus 1 rural water utility, Georgetown and its vast rural water service area, which now includes Stamping Ground, the Frankfort Water Plant Board plus 5 rural water utilities. To receive a supplemental water supply through a near-term but second phase of the Bluegrass Water Supply Commission effort are the following: Berea, Mount Sterling, Lancaster, and Cynthiana. Add to that list of 4 cities 7 smaller cities or PSC-regulated water utilities that purchase treated water from one of those 4. Very much is at stake here. Kentucky American says that, through its proposed project, it expects to meet the additional demand for water for the summer 2010 World Equestrian Games. Further, the project will permit the Bluegrass Water Supply Commission to honor its commitment to the city of Winchester by furnishing additional water to meet the needs of a new industry there that is providing more than 100 jobs for the local and regional economy. Please note that this project under discussion is not just a water project. In significant respects, it is an important economic development project that will allow our part of the Commonwealth to experience planned growth and continued economic vitality. About 15 years ago, Kentucky American extended a large diameter water line, north through northern Fayette County and on into southern and central Scott County to provide water service to Toyota. I challenge persons today to drive or walk along the water line route and to be able to discern where the water line is buried, since evidence of the water line installation is not evident. In closing, I encourage the Commission to approve Kentucky American's petition to undertake its planned project relating to the Kentucky Rivers Pool 3 as a long-term supplemental water source. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hassel. All right, Patrick Kennedy is next.
Patrick Kennedy. I live in Owen County. Skipped the meeting last night. Come back. Just briefly, a point that I talked to you the other day about watching the Kentucky River pool up. Back in the early '80s, I had the good fortune to live also in God's country in Peaks Mill, and I would get out in the creek, and I can remember a drought at that time where the creek pooled up. I don't see it pooling up now when I ride by because it's running on water from Toyota, which is wastewater from Toyota. It's pretty clean, I feel like, but it's still wastewater. I know in Pool 3, Frankfort Sewer dumps into Pool 3 about 2 miles or a little more up from the proposed junction for the pipeline, and a high percentage of the water flowing into Pool 3 is wastewater from upstream cities and plants. Now, Louisville, to my understanding, is pulling some of their water now from aquifers and moving to pull most or all of their water from aquifers and has an unlimited supply. So I don't think it's necessary for us to build a new plant to pull out of the bottom end of the river when Louisville has excess capacity and can provide treated, clean water from an unlimited source. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. All right, the next speaker is Penny Greathouse.
My name is Penny Greathouse, and we are farm owners and have a farm on 1262, and also we would be have a farm on I-64, so they would kind of get us going either way. If I had my preference, I would prefer they go I-64. What I mainly wanted to talk about was, I'm not sure when this project started, but we did not become aware of it until March. We've owned the land for over a year, and once I found, a neighbor told us about the meeting and asked us if we knew anything about this water line, and I said no. So I called some of the other people along the route, and it seemed that none of them had been talked to or knew anything about it. I knew someone that knew some people at Kentucky American Water, and once they found out who I really was, then I did get letters, and I felt like that was not really what this should be all about. Everybody should be treated fairly. I spoke with one lady, and she said that I was asking her if she had been informed about it. She said that, yes, she had gotten a letter, and so I talked to her about that, we could oppose it, and she said, well, how can we oppose Kentucky American Water? What we say, we'll have nothing. So I told her that she needed to stand up and speak, and that way everyone would, if you can't complain if you don't say something. So anyways, after a period of about a month, she called me back and left a message that she wanted to speak with me, said that a lady had called her and said she needed to come and speak to her about the easement. And she said, when I told her that I didn't think that that it was a done deal, she said the ladies told her that it was pretty much a done deal, that the water line was going through, that there was some people that was opposing it, but it was not any big deal. So what I just think that it's been kind of underhanded, that people, that if you have all these people that can put all these facts together and all these numbers together, I didn't understand why it was so difficult to find out who the proper landowners were. All you have to do is go down to the PVA office and find out. But they were like, oh, well, we didn't know, or couldn't find out, we didn't know who those landowners were. I think it was just a ploy to keep everybody guessing or hearsay of passing this and that, and not really being forthright and upfront with the landowners. So that's the gist of what I have to say, and I do oppose this route. Thank you.
Thank you. right, the next speaker is Kathy Gibson. Now, Charles and Kathy signed this, but somebody circled Kathy and said Kathy's going to talk. I know you're Kathy. Was Charles make that decision? All right, go ahead.
Well, you definitely don't have a problem hearing me, okay? And I'm back again. Hi.
Hi.
My name is Kathy Gibson. My husband and I live in Scott County, Kentucky. Thank you for allowing me to speak before you again tonight. We currently own a family farm located at the corner of Highway 460 and Ironworks. We own one side of it outright, and my husband is trustee for the other 200 acres opposite the road. It's been in my husband's family, both sides, over 400 acres for over 100 years, and it's still in his family. We are mindful that even though we would not benefit directly from KAW's proposed pipeline, others could. Over the past years, we've allowed not one, not two, but 3 water lines, 1 Columbia gas line, 1 telephone line, 1 cable line, and huge Kentucky utility standards to be placed on the farms. And so, as you can see, we feel like we pretty much have done our duty in allowing the utility companies to have, easements and so forth. However, we are opposed to Kentucky American's proposed pipeline. The destruction their proposed pipeline would cause would not only impact our land for our use in agricultural purposes, and that's what we do for a living, but environmentally is unsound. If Kentucky American Water's proposal was the only one on the table, we might feel differently, but it's not. We feel that the Louisville Water Company's proposed pipeline down the I-64 corridor is not only cost-effective, but what would do the least amount of damage to the land and to the landowners. It's also not using an unlimited, it will also be using an unlimited water source from the Ohio River. The Kentucky River is not an unlimited source of water. Kentucky American's proposal is not drought resistant as they contend. And since we're in a serious drought right now, which has been classified, I believe, extreme, that is an issue that does need to be addressed. Their proposal is to draw water only from the Kentucky River on their phase 1. What happens if a catastrophic event happens on the Kentucky River and the water is unusable? What then? What is the proposals? This is what you need to ask. Their phase 2 proposal is to build an additional pipeline to the Ohio River. Why do we need 2 pipelines to the Ohio River? Would that not be a duplication of services? I was going to say something about if they don't get the majority of the easements, they'd have to use eminent domain. But since y'all said y'all don't handle that, then I won't bother you with it. In closing, I believe that the Public Service Commission was created to speak for the public and to determine what is in the best interest of the public, not a for-profit water company. One of our concerns is that if they're currently for sale, and do we know for a fact, once again, will the new owners go on with phase 2? The customers will ultimately be the ones paying for this project in rate increases. So basically, we'll be paying for Kentucky American to increase their infrastructure and make their books look good for a prospective buyer. And I don't think that's in the best interest of the public. Do you? In closing, you have a monumental decision to make that will not only affect this generation, but generations to come. I trust you will consider all proposals for a pipeline to Central Kentucky and will ultimately decide that Louisville Water Company is in the best interest for all concerned. And for one thing else I'd like to add, please do not let the World Equestrian events of 2010 be a deciding factor, because once those people are gone, it's going to be people like us that are still here.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson, very much. All right, our next speaker is Edward Colley.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Edward Colley from Franklin County. I totally oppose the Kentucky American Water proposal. My two sons and I own a very nice piece of property in northern Franklin County. We've owned it since 1989. Kentucky American wants to run their pipeline through our property. This is where we are buried our deceased pets, and our sons' mother's ashes were scattered. I ask that you please consider the Louisville American Water Pipeline proposal to run a route along the I-64 corridor to Lexington over this proposal by a foreign entity that is only interested in raising a stock price. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colley. Okay, Bob Pinkston.
Good evening again, Commissioners.
Good evening.
And this is my third trip this week, and I'm still not good at this, so bear with me. My name is Bob Pinkston. I live here in Frankfort in Indian Hills. Who have we heard from this week who supports this project? Well, on Monday, we heard from Owen County officials. So what's in it for them? Well, how about a $60 million addition to their tax base without any of the pipeline? Sure, they're for it. What if the plant were built 100 yards upstream in Franklin County? Would the Owen County folks have come and been for it? And what are they going to tell their constituents in a few years when yet another new pipeline rips up western Owen County? Who else have we heard from? We've heard from members of the Bluegrass Water Supply Commission. What's in it for them? Well, if that commission is going to remain in existence, it's going to require cooperation with the 500-pound gorilla, which is Kentucky American. This partnership they speak so glowingly of, what kind of partnership is 80-20? No 80-20 arrangement I've ever heard of leaves the 20 any options other than going along with the 80. Kentucky American wants this project. Sure, Bluegrass Water Supply Commission is for it. But honestly, if Kentucky American were behind a Louisville connection, who doubts that the Bluegrass Water Supply Commission would be for that one too? We heard last night from a gentleman who says he's changed his position from several years ago away from supporting the Louisville connection. What's changed is a Kentucky River solution he honestly couldn't support to one that he can. He is a member of the Kentucky River Authority. They want a Kentucky River solution. They get a nickel for every 1,000 gallons that's taken from the river. Sure, the Kentucky River Authority wants that. And that gentleman, by the way, is prominently featured in today's propaganda insert in the State Journal. And we've heard from a couple folks who basically say, hey, let's support this and get it over with. Not the best reason I've ever heard, but good for them for speaking up. Now, you've also heard from dozens of concerned citizens who believe there is a better way. None of them, none of us, have anything to gain from the Louisville option or from any other option. Many of them do have much to lose. There is a better way. The Louisville pipeline is far less destructive to the environment, to the beauty of the region, and to individual property owners, and far less damaging to the pocketbooks of ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pinkston. Okay, I know the last name is Wiley. Is it Marvin Wiley? Or possibly, let's see, Marcella, I guess. I'm sorry, yes, Marcella.
I'm definitely not a man.
No, you're not a Marvin.
Can you ask people to speak into the microphone?
hard to hear back here.
All right.
Can you hear me? I spoke into the microphone.
Come just maybe just a little closer. There you go. Thank you. Go
My
ahead and
name-
identify yourself, please.
My name is Marcella Wiley, and I live at 2948 Jones Lane. And I spoke with you all last night, but I didn't get to address all the things. Tonight I wanted to say that in October of 2006, my husband was gravely ill with terminal lung cancer. There was a vehicle that came on our farm, went past our house, and my son happened to come in the driveway and saw a vehicle. So he followed it 1/4 mile on our farm to our barn, and it happened to be some surveyors that the Kentucky American Water Company had hired. They did not ask permission to come on our land, and I think 1/4 mile off the road is not on public domain. I think that they did not take my rights as a Kentucky citizen or a citizen of America into effect when my husband and I were in the house. They could have knocked on our door and asked permission to went on our land or even to have explained what they did. So I don't think if they did this before the project is even underhand, what are they going to do when people sign or are forced to sign these contracts to let them come and dig water lines on your property? What rights will you have then? They'll have a contract saying they can go 30 feet, 60 feet, I think it's 90 feet during construction. What right will you have as an American citizen to protect your rights? They may drive all over your land and not stay within that boundary. So I think that they invade our privacy as American citizens. And also, today I saw some people out drilling. I was not under the impression that a contract had been given yet. But I want to know, I live in a rocky area, I want to know what's going to happen to the millions of tons of rock that they're going to dig out of the ground to make this 8-foot trench to bury this pipeline in. Where's it going? I don't want them to put it on my farm. And I'm sure a lot of other landowners around there. And I don't know of any road construction where they could haul hundreds of truckloads of rock. It's not dirt, it's rock. And so I don't think this is feasible. I think that will shoot up the cost of this pipeline proposal. I also think that they need to take into consideration, you all do, of the cost. We've already went over it. Many people have told you how much X is and Y is, and it all comes down to the fact that $50,000 million versus $165 million just does not add up. Be a farmer's wife, and you will find out just exactly what it is to meet a budget. And you have to pinch pennies. So, when we live on $1,000 and their budget's multi-million, add it up. I think for the best interest of people in central Kentucky, we should not be forced to pay extensive prices for 1,000 gallons of water when it can be bought more cheaply through the Louisville Water Company. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Wiley. Mark Schindler. Mark Schindler is the next speaker. Mark Schindler.
Hi, I'm Mark Schindler, north of Peaks Mill. Thanks for this forum. I'm completely opposed to Kentucky American's plan to control water of central Kentucky and to financially better their standing as a company. I think you are truly fulfilling your mission tonight as a public service commission, allowing me and the other members of the public who are involved in this issue, not for any financial gain, to express ourselves. You have a privilege and a responsibility to look at the issue from a number of angles, one of which, of course, is cost. KAW is going to give you some cost numbers, and while I think they're important, I think you should also extricate yourself from them to a certain extent. Kentucky American would love for you to hang out with their calculations until November. I think, however, that you need to get someplace where you can take a big view of the whole matter. You need to look 20 years down the road. In 20 years, Kentucky American, if you grant them permission to pull out of Pool 3, they're going to come back to you because of the documented unreliability of the Kentucky River as a water source. And they're going to come back and ask to build a pipeline from Monterey to the Ohio. Now, I understand that the Louisville Water Company has a one-step plan to get treated water of Central Kentucky from the Ohio. I don't know that you can trust Louisville's numbers any more than Kentucky Americans, but I would expect you, as a purveyor of this matter, to do this. Compare what it would cost for each plan to get to the Ohio. Apples to apples, as they say. Kentucky American's plan is 57 miles from Lexington, Monterey to Carrollton. Louisville Water Company's 38 along I-64 to Shelbyville. Kentucky American's is a water treatment plant. Louisville's doesn't. What's less expensive? I would argue that common sense would be a good trail out of the abyss of numbers you will be finding yourself in. From a good perspective, too, you might be able to see the horror of this mega project as it goes through small picturesque communities like Peaks Mill, Schweitzer. The machines required to dig an 8-foot deep, 4-foot wide trench are going to seem a lot bigger and more grotesque in Peaks Mill, Kentucky than along the interstate. And if matters of proportion and propriety don't concern you, then you might consider the cost to local governments as these machines damage our rural roads. The KAW plan is going to cut through one of the world's most endangered landscapes, according to the World Monument Fund designation in 2006. I have a few more seconds.
Summarize, go ahead.
The bluegrass is a world monument, is a value to us. That we could damage this monument through poor public policy is an excruciating cost to us. The figures that KAW is going to give to you are not going to show the hidden costs of their plan. So I'm glad you exist as an entity. I think you can look at a comprehensive way at this matter, and I think if you take a look at the big picture, you will be truly acting in the public interest. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to butcher this name, so forgive me in advance. Elizabeth Felgendrer. I'm not even going to, F-E-L, you know who you are. Probably pretty simple when you say it.
You did pretty good. My name is Elizabeth Felgendrer, and I am a resident of Franklin County and own and operate a 200-acre farm where we breed cattle, raise and train horses, and produce hay. This has been our home and place of business for more than 30 years. Kentucky American Water's plans are to take 5,500 linear feet for a 30-foot wide permanent easement running the full length of two sides of my property, which border on a state road and highway. Unlike many easements, a large portion of this plan is scheduled to leave the proximity of the roadway and invade the core portions of my land, rendering it unusable for the foreseeable future and changed forever. The crossing of the Buck Run Creek and the associated forested areas where the deer and the antelope play will destroy what natural habitat exists on the property. These are my personal problems with the waterline plan, but I would also like to address the larger issue. It is my understanding that the PSC needs to be convinced that the construction of this new pipeline is a necessary project in order for approval to be given to KAW to begin. The key word is necessary. There continues to be great debate over details such as estimated construction cost, estimated long-term cost, availability of grant money to defray cost, the amount of available Kentucky River water for delivery, and so on. But the key word is still necessary. When we know, as we do now, that our neighboring city of Louisville wants and needs to sell their uber-plentiful Ohio River treated water to the Lexington communities, that they are able to sell it for a fair and affordable price, that they are willing to financially cooperate in the building of the needed pipeline extension, and that the Louisville pipeline extension can find its cozy place hugging nearby the I-64 corridor within existing utility easement lands. How can anyone come to the conclusion that the Kentucky American Water Pipeline is necessary? The KAW plan is no more than an option. It is not a necessity, and therefore does not meet the standard whereby the rights and privileges of so many citizens should be taken. Thank you.
All right, Jim McWilliams.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you very much for allowing the public to give direct input to you, the commissioners of the PSC. I am Jim McWilliams, and I live in northern Franklin County, and I am opposed to the Kentucky American proposal that is before the commission. Excuse me. I've spent most of my spare time since January researching and trying to get my arms around this extremely complex case. You can ask my wife, she'll tell you. With so many entities involved, with so many twists and turns, it was extremely difficult to master the material. I have a stack of paper, literally 18 feet tall, that I've been wading through just on this case. I pity you. But I do have a pretty good feel for it now. Having attended your public hearings in Owington and Lexington this week, I think the opponents of the proposal have done a very good job of relaying the most important points. Of course, it is very difficult to thoroughly explain the more subtle points in a public hearing setting. Therefore, I will be submitting written information to the PSC for the record. There are a couple of points that have been omitted or not have been stressed enough that I would like to highlight very briefly. First of all, let me firmly state I am a proponent of regional water solutions, just like Mayor Burtner from Winchester talked about in Lexington yesterday. In this post-9/11 world, we need to be connected. We need to break down these arbitrary political boundaries and work along natural boundaries. We need to think more in terms of regional solutions. Our water decisions should be governed by the people through a democratic process, not by executives in some boardroom halfway around the world. The first thing I want to get to deals with the history of the relationship between Kentucky American and the BWSC, the Bluegrass Water Supply Consortium, then Commission. Back at the turn of the century, as all the water planners were trying to figure out how to meet the supply needs of central Kentucky, Kentucky American Water Company was a full partner in the Bluegrass Water Supply Consortium, along with 15 or so central Kentucky communities, of which Don Hassel talked about. With the release of the $540,000 taxpayer-funded study in 2004, the consortium became a commission subject to Kentucky revised statutes. Kentucky American, being a private for-profit entity, had to drop out as a full member, but remained as an ex officio member, attending all of the planning meetings. The report clearly states that a regional water commission would and should be formed under Chapter 74 of Kentucky revised statutes to own and operate this regional water commission. The study opined that since this RWC, Regional Water Commission, would be formed as a governmental entity, tax-exempt financing, low-interest loans, and state and federal grants would be potentially available. Again, Kentucky American was at the table. Now let's fast forward to the summer of 2006.
That's 3 minutes, but go ahead and summarize if you can.
That wasn't 3 minutes. Surely not. Really, I timed it. If you check the minutes of the meeting in the account, you will see what happens next. Kentucky American decided to go it alone. They decided to take this $540,000 plan and run with it. And boy, were the BWSC members hot. Some of their quotes in the newspaper were very pointed and direct. It took several months for the areas to make nice and forge a loose partnership. For the BWSC to buy into the Kentucky American proposal, they will estimate it will require an investment of $60 million. This would come from the U.S. Treasury and State General Fund. Does this sound like a partnership that's successful to you, that will be successful? I wouldn't put my money on it. And finally, lastly, I heard that Mr. Rowe of Kentucky American, the president, said last night that people were becoming overly emotional about this issue. Well, that may be true, but please remember that the people you're hearing from are taxpayers, ratepayers, landowners, and so on. Mr. Rowe of Kentucky American, and those people aren't getting paid. Mr. Rowe, the opponents of the plan aren't getting paid. Mr. Rowe and Kentucky American, however, are able to spend lots of money on a vast PR machine aimed at these very people, aimed at their emotions. I think I know why they might seem emotional to him, and this is an interesting point. The Mariah Group won the Silver Anvil Award from the Public Relations Society of America for their work with Kentucky American on a local ownership fight. It was a 57-month fight. They worked with 4 other national APR firms to prevent the city of Lexington from using eminent domain to take back the water company. The Herald Leader reported that the Mariah Group contacted the Herald Leader reporters 3 times a day for the duration of the fight, and it would routinely ghostwrite op-ed pieces that were published in the paper and give them to prominent citizens. The Silver Anvil Award. And when I wrote this last night, I wondered if this machine has been deployed to fight the people in this case. I don't think the opponents of this plan have the capital to invest in a PR blitz to make the water company seem emotional. I don't think that's the case. But interestingly enough, in my local paper today, there's this insert, so I think the PR machine blitz is on. It's a very nice publication. This was in the Frankfort State Journal today. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry I went over my time.
Mr. McWilliams, I would tell you also, sir, if you would get your, I don't know when you plan on getting your written comments in, but we definitely want to see them.
Thank you very much,
So get them in
sir.
as quickly as you can.
Thank you.
All right. All right, the next speaker is Celis Bessinger.
Hi, my name is Celis Bessinger, and I am opposed to the KW plan. I wanted to take this opportunity to actually read aloud the Franklin County Fiscal Court resolution that was recently passed in regards to Kentucky American Water, and I'll summarize a little bit. Be it resolved that, 1, the Franklin County Fiscal Court supports a water supply strategy that includes access to water from the Ohio River, the largest river east of the Mississippi, for the reason that this access will provide protection against drought and will protect against interruption of the public water supply due to circumstances that may make the Kentucky River unusable or unavailable for periods of time. 2, the Franklin County Fiscal Court does not support the construction by Kentucky American Water Company of a large pipeline through eastern and northern portions of Franklin County and the associated water production facilities along Pool 3 of the Kentucky River under the terms of that pipeline proposal currently under application with the KPSC. The Fiscal Court is of the position that the proposed construction will be unnecessarily burdensome on citizens of Franklin County and the environment and will unnecessarily duplicate available water supply facilities that the Louisville Water Company has indicated it can supply to Franklin County at a rate of 95 million gallons per day of treated water. 3, the Franklin County Fiscal Court supports and urges discussions between all interested parties, including Kentucky American Water Company and Louisville Water Company, regarding a connection between these 2 major regional water supplies so that there will be ample, reliable, safe, and quality water supplied in a timely manner to Franklin County, Kentucky, and the central Kentucky region. And also, I hesitate to be inflammatory, but I think it's obvious to everyone in this room that Kentucky American Water and the representatives are lying through their teeth when they claim to be representing the public's best interests over their own. The facility that they want built will improve their assets and their own holdings. It's obvious that that's what they're really fighting for. everyone who's fighting for them is fighting for that very same thing. I think that it will require an unreasonable amount of naivete and gullibility to actually trust their intentions and to believe that they are acting in the public's best interest instead of their own best interest. Everyone here is aware of that. They're aware of it. The people speaking on their behalf are aware of it. I believe that you all are aware of it, and we're trusting you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Okay, Tom Marshall is next. Tom Marshall?
Watching you on the tube. I thought I'd leave my notes behind. I'll probably do better. Extreme.
Do I look better on the tube than I do? I hope I do.
You look great. All three of you look great. Now, don't hold that on my 3 minutes.
All right.
Oh. Hey, I'm serious. I mean, I have great respect for the commissioners and the commission. I thought tonight what I would do, because there's only a limited amount of time, and I will also submit some detailed written comments that I pray that you'll take a look at, that I'll continue the story of the High Bridge story. You'll recall there was a meeting of the Bluegrass Water Supply Commission where I talked, and I spoke last night about the fact that you hadn't heard yet about this $60 million. To me, that's the foundation of sand that the Bluegrass Water Supply Commission is built on. Because they said at that time, and I went back and listened to my iPod today because I recorded the meeting, and they didn't say they were toast. What they said is, if we don't get the $60 million, put a fork in it, we're done. So if they don't get the $60 million, they don't have the equity buy-in with Kentucky American. Kentucky American doesn't have the $60 million that is going to be, in essence, a taxpayer contribution to their construction. What they said is we need the $60 million because if we don't get the buy down on the rates. The rates will be absolutely too expensive. The rates will be in excess of $3 per 1,000 gallons, and the people in Winchester and Nicholasville and the other communities simply can't afford that. The second part of what they talked about that day really blew me away. They said, well, we're getting 5 MGD from this proposal, but we need more. We have a second phase to this. Our second phase is to run a line to Louisville. They say that once they get the buy-in and they start generating some money from this buy-in, selling water to their customers, that they're going to put that money towards a water line to Louisville because they need more water and they know it. And that the Louisville water line has got all kinds of good qualities in terms of a source for them, an inexhaustible supply, a redundant supply, a supply they can afford. So, there's the obvious question. Why are we going through all this? Why are we putting the commission through this? This whole thing seems to me to be a little premature. If we don't have the $60 million committed, we don't have the buy-in. If we don't have the buy-in, it's too expensive. Why aren't we going to Louisville? By we, I mean Kentucky American. They ought to be going to Louisville now instead of putting everybody through this for their own corporate business plan. You need to watch the ball. You need to look for those thumbs. You need to know what's going on in these meetings. I wish the Bluegrass Water Supply Commission people would be a little more direct with you about how the train was hijacked. There at the back of the train is the passengers. They don't know what the price is going to be for this ticket. They don't know if they're going to be able to afford it. You are the switchmen and women. You need to take a careful look at this. If need be, you need to put that train on the side track for a little while until a reasonable decision can be made, one that is fair to the public and not crafted by the silver anvil. Thank you.
Okay. We are getting close to the end. Looks like we've got maybe a half a dozen or maybe 7 or 8 more speakers. Let me tell you that if you originally signed up that you did not want to speak, but a friend or neighbor or someone else has made a comment that all of a sudden causes you to want to speak, it is not too late to let one of our staffers know that you wish to change your mind and you want to speak. I would be more than happy to hear from you. Or if you've come in late, and for some reason you did not sign the sign-up sheet and indicate your desire to speak, we'll be more than happy to put your name on the list at the end and give you your time. So with that said, we'll move to the next speaker, which is Connie Lemley.
Hi, I'm Connie Lemley. I live in northern Franklin County, and I want to thank you for being here listening to us tonight. I, too, am opposed to the Kentucky American Plan, and I'm a mom, so we tell stories a lot, so I kind of wanted to start with a story. Once there was a king, and this king loved clothes. He had so many clothes that he had to dedicate a whole room of his palace, a whole wing of his palace, as closet space. And so all of the tailors in the land vied for his favor, because they knew that if he liked their clothes, that their future would be assured. And one day a tailor came from out of town, and he came up to the king, and he said that he could make the most beautiful raiment possible. And so he went and he asked for silk and jewels, and he made this beautiful clothing, and he put it on the king, and the king looked at it, and wasn't really sure if he saw it, but the tailor was telling him how beautiful it was, and he asked his courtiers, and his courtiers said, "Oh, Your Majesty, it's lovely," because they weren't really sure what else to say. And so he went out and he started walking around, and he had made an announcement beforehand about this beautiful new clothing he had. And so all of the people in the land looked, and they thought for a minute, and then they decided, well, it must be beautiful. Everyone else is saying it is. And so that went on for a while. And then eventually, one day he was out on parade, and everyone knows the ending, but a small child said, "Wait a minute, the king isn't wearing anything." And people looked again, and they realized that he wasn't. And it's that moment where people look at the same thing that they've been seeing for a long time and see something different that I think is really interesting, because that's the place that we're at right now in our society. And so I think the conventional story about water is that all of us should be able to use as much water as we want. And it's the job of the utilities and ultimately the Public Service Commission to make sure that we have it. And also that to be economically competitive, that we really need to provide lots of water and lots of cheap water so we can attract the companies that we want here. And then part of the story is also that the least cost solution is really just whatever costs the least to build that pipeline, build that plant, and get it to the people. That's the least cost solution. But right now, we're at that time where people are starting to have that moment. People are starting to look and say, wait a minute, that king doesn't have any clothes on. And we're realizing that the least cost solution isn't just the least cost that Kentucky American is paying to build these things. It's we need to look at the environmental costs. We need to look at the social costs. We need to look at all these things that the people in this room have been talking about today. And then, just to finish up, longer than I thought, the other real big piece that we need to look at right now is energy. Because the way people are looking at energy is changing so quickly. People are saying things that a year or two ago I never would have expected to be hearing. And it takes a huge amount of water to process and pump. It takes a huge amount of energy to process and pump water. And we really need to look at that. And we need to look at the fact that we could create a lot more jobs by making our society, making our state more energy and water efficient than we ever would create by providing lots of cheap water to the big industries that might move here and then might leave in a couple of years. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Andy McDonald is next.
Good evening. Nice to see you again. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you all. My name is Andy McDonald. I live in northern Franklin County, and this is my third time speaking before the Public Service Commission on this issue. I thought a gentleman who spoke earlier made a very good point that hadn't necessarily come up, addressing the question of, we really need this water, why are these people standing in our way? Well, if Kentucky American wanted to partner with the Louisville Water Company and agree to purchase their water and bring it down I-64, I don't think people would be standing in their way, at least the people in this room would not be. And it's easy to point the fingers on the people who are the victims and say that they're the problem because they're standing up for their needs and their rights. But we also need to look at what's the overall costs and the wider cost to society. And as the last woman who spoke said, there are wider costs that we all need to look at. It's not just what's the rate on your water bill. That's the bottom line. Is this a better plan or a worse plan? And I understand that your mandate is not to look at the costs to the environment or the broader costs. And I'm wondering, whose mandate is it? Who is intervening in this process to stand up for the public interest? And I had thought at one point that would be the Attorney General's office. And I was very disappointed to see that they intervened in favor of Kentucky American's proposal, because it seems very clear to me that the Kentucky American's proposal is not in the public interest. So I read with great interest the Attorney General's filing, and it made no sense to me. They based their argument against the Louisville Water Company's option on data that was 10 or 15 years old. And they argued that there wasn't enough information to judge the Louisville Water Company's proposal. But then they concluded that Kentucky American's proposal was better. Well, if there's not enough information to make a comparison, why draw a conclusion? I think it would have been more appropriate, at the very least, to say we cannot draw a conclusion, or that this alternative might be better and we need to wait until we have more information. But I would also hope that the Attorney General's office could look at the broader cost to society and the costs of unplanned development. The Bluegrass Water Supply Commission spoke earlier about wanting that this was a project for regional development, not just for water. Well, yes, but it's a project for unplanned development, because you're going to put a gigantic water source cutting through the Peaks Mill, Ironworks Pike area. And what's going to be the result? It's going to be haphazard development, people plugging in, and then other infrastructure is going to be needed. What's going to be the cost to the local communities? There's an economic cost of extending the services to serve whatever gets built when this water is there. That's contrary to our comprehensive plan in Franklin County. We want planned development. We want thoughtful development. And this pipeline is not part of any plan in terms of where the community and the county is going. And so I would ask the Attorney General's office to reconsider and think more deeply about the public interest that they're commissioned to defend, and to maybe offer an additional perspective, additional opinion in this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMahon. Okay, the next folks on the list are Rob and Linda Parker. Do both of you wish to speak, or just one of you? Rob and or Linda Parker. Okay. Oh, that's not you. Okay. All right. They must have left. If they come in, we'll come back to them. Okay. Evelyn Miller is next.
Hello, my name is Evelyn Miller. I live at 1683 Woodlake Road in Frankfort. Thank you for allowing me to come to talk. Now, today I've not got facts, figures, anything that's really planned to speak. I just want to speak to you how I feel as a landowner. For starters, I have not yet received anything from Kentucky American Water District in any form. And I've just recently been told that they are going to put a substation right next to my property. My farm is valued over $325,000. If this pump station is put there, it will make the value of my property worth zero. That's nothing for my children or their children to even have. I bought property out in the country because it was peaceful and quiet. I didn't have all the city pressures. But once this pump station comes in, what am I going to have? 24/7, the hum of a pump station. What about the chemicals they're going to use? I've got asthma. My children have allergies. What's it going to do to them? We won't even be able to go outside and enjoy our swimming pool, or not even look at our garden. Can't see flowers. My animals, they won't survive. And not tell me to think of this. What if they do build this pump station? What's going to happen if one day something happens, it goes wrong? I'm wiped off the planet Earth because I won't survive a big 42-inch water main. And I also wanted to address the fact that there was a young college student who came one day and was very adamant that I signed her contract. She couldn't give me any details about it, and I didn't want to sign a contract without knowing what I'm signing. She just wanted to say, we're going to give you $3 a foot. Well, that's not any money, not to mention that when they go in to do this water line, it's not going to be a small area. We're talking at least 100 foot wide. They only want to pay you a running foot. Now, I know what kind of damage construction can do. My husband is also in construction, but he does concrete, and he makes or takes the time that he doesn't do anything to destroy the environment. Well, we did have a water line go through our property a few years ago. Well, we are still cleaning up the mess that they left, not to mention all the debris, everything that they didn't want. We were the dump yard for them. I don't want that again. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to anyone else to be dumped on. And, I also see, too, that, there's somebody there today off along the road doing some drilling. They're not even Kentucky people. If you're going to do something for the people of Kentucky. Don't get outsiders in. That doesn't benefit us at all. But, I think the water company's going to destroy the land we have, and the best route to take would be Louisville Water. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much. All right, the next speaker is George Shera, or Shera. I'm not sure what the correct pronunciation. Okay, George Shera.
I'm not as eloquent as some of the people that have come before me. I'm kind of shooting from the hip. I just found out about this last night, so please bear with me. I live on Peaks Mill Road, so if they put this pipeline in, I'm going to have a front row seat, trust me. I built my house 5 years ago within the rules that were laid out by Franklin County, so I've got a 60-foot setback. 90-foot construction easement puts their easement right at my hall closet. Nobody's even bothered to talk to me. I'll just leave you with that. The Kentucky River flow is exceptionally low this year due to the drought. I have a boat. I've been out there. I've looked at the dams. If you think you're getting 25 million gallons out of that, man, you're shooting in the dark. Ain't going to happen. The flow is not there to support that pipeline. I was on my way out tonight, and I just happened to notice that they're already doing their core drilling. So they're acting like they've already got this in the bag. Once again, it's kind of arrogant. I've not seen or heard of any risk management plans in place for this particular project, especially even now they're core drilling. No risk management that I'm aware of. Nothing. I already mentioned the easement going to be ending at my hall closet. Of course, I informed my wife of this, and I heard some things out of her that I had never heard before. So they're free to deal with her. I wouldn't want it. And I'll just wrap this up real quick. I've read a couple editorials about us appearing to be that hicks that don't know how to deal with their water supply. It's been my observation that it's really not the Hicks that have the problem. It's the city folks. Thank you.
Okay, did Rob and Linda Parker come into the room? All right, they must have left. All right, the last speaker this evening is Joel Dufour.
Hello. 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 Thank you for the opportunity to address you again, where I was the last speaker in Owen County. My work schedule allows for this. I'm going to read an article that appeared in U.S. News and World Report. I'm just going to pick a couple highlights out of it here, posted in May of this year. Just as a planned sale of the largest private water company in the United States moves closer, potentially embarrassing records of high-level corporate meetings have surfaced detailing how the business failed to live up to expectations for the German utility giant RWE. RWE has been moving forward to get the necessary state approval so it can spin off American Water in an initial public offering sometime this year, just 5 years after paying $4.6 billion in cash for the business serving 18 million customers in 29 states. That sum was a 46% premium over the stock price. Expectations have been high for expansion and growth. And it goes on to detail, let's see, but according to the minutes of a meeting by the RWE Supervisory Board, equivalent to a corporate board of directors, on September 16th, 2005, which was a couple years ago, the hopes that water would become the company's most profitable and fastest-growing corporate division were quickly dashed. Political resistance to privatization proved strong in the U.S., where the vast majority of drinking water services were still run by local governments. And RWE underestimated the huge costs it faced due to outdated infrastructure and mounting U.S. environmental regulations. Chief executive at the time, Harry Royals, is quoted as describing the difficult situation in the United States where the company was losing about 19% of its water volume through leaky pipes. There had been insufficient investment in the 10 years leading up to the purchase. At the company's current rate of investment, it would take 200 years to replace all the distribution lines that needed, he said. So, and I'll skip a bunch of these details. At the end, there's a comment by the Washington, D.C.-based public interest group Food and Water Watch. These minutes demonstrate that RWE doesn't believe that private water companies in the United States are a good investment. The company is dumping their bad investment on Wall Street investors and American ratepayers. And that's about it. This article is available online for anybody who's interested. As I mentioned in the last time I made comments, I believe that we are all being the victims here, or people would like us to be the victims of a corporate shuffle in the, and I don't think this is the place for it. I think the costs are much too high to the ratepayers and the taxpayers and the community at large here. And I hope that the commissioners will, after reviewing all the data, I hope they will see this is the case. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dufour. All right, that concludes the hearing, at least from the standpoint of those folks who have indicated a desire to speak to the commission. I'm going to ask one last time if there are any other individuals that wish to address the commission. I would say that when we have... Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Come on up to the microphone. While she's coming up, let me say that, as I said before, the evidentiary hearing in this matter will be held November the 26th. Because we have had 3 public hearings to obtain a public comment, we will not be seeking and accepting public comment on that day. If we did, then we probably would spend a good part of the first hearing day taking comment. And so that's the reason that we've gone out into the community, into the 3 of the 4 communities or 3 of the 4 counties affected, so we could take the comment both at your convenience and so that we could take it early and be able to consider it well in advance of the hearing. So please understand that if you wish to speak, now's the time, because we simply are not going to be in a position to accept any further comments, verbal comments, after today or after this evening. Of course, any written comments, as I said in my opening remarks, will be accepted right up to the day of the hearing, November the 26th. Okay, ma'am. I've seen you before, but I forget your name. Forgive me.
Okay,
what is your name?
My name's Jennifer Lindberg, and thank you for allowing me to give a couple of comments. I don't have a written speech like I did up in Owenton, but I did want to respond to something that the Kentucky American Water president, I guess, said last night. I wasn't there. But that people are just too emotional about this issue. And I just want to ask the question that what happens when companies or boardrooms of people or even government officials make decisions without consulting their hearts? Then it seems like you can make decisions based on profit alone or the bottom line. But then it seems when you do that, if you don't consult your heart, then people are expendable. Our native plants are expendable. Our culture is expendable. It's just profit alone. And I think, for me, that just seems very, very scary. And I think all of us here are consulting our hearts. We are really hoping for a beautiful future here in Kentucky, and we love our place, and we're here because we love our place. And we hope that you all can help us continue on with our relationship that we have with our land and our neighborhoods and with each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lindberg. Very much. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir. Come forward.
My name is Rick Wallen. Let's see, I have cattle in Franklin County, and then I farm in probably 3 or 4 other counties doing custom work for everybody, and then live in another county. So I'm a unique individual because I'm going to be affected in 2 counties if this pipeline comes through. I'm going to leave an open door. I'm not going to say that Kentucky American is better than Louisville, because I have not personally seen the information on what the cost is other than what the newspaper says. But I will say this, I am a farmer, and when I go into a farm dealership and I say I want to buy a baler, I want to buy a mower, they don't make the tractors I use, so I have to rebuild the old ones. But I do look for parts at the dealership. They cringe when I walk in because I do my homework before I purchase anything. Since you represent us, I hope that you will be given good information so you can do your homework to make the best decision for us since you represent us. Because I have to make the best decision that I can for myself and my wife and the bank, so everybody stays happy. Because if the bank's not happy, then I'm not happy, and then I know my wife is not going to be happy. But I hope that you all have good information, and the outcome is based on good information, your decision you make. Because, as one person said, it's going to hurt them. Well, it's going to hurt me in 2 counties instead of just a piece of land in 1 county, because it will be one farm. I may have to go out of cattle business if they come through it. So personally, I'm not in favor of Kentucky American taking 25, 30 acres away from me when the cattle are fed or grazed on probably 60 acres, because I bring feed in for the cattle. It's nice, it's clean, but, I stretch my pennies. You can go talk to anybody in in Georgetown that I deal with, and they'll say, yep, he's got a sharp pencil, so I hope your all's pencils are sharp. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, does anyone else wish to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. My name is Melissa Calhoun. We met in Owen County. I live on Camp Pleasant Road. I'd like to say this. If you expect us to respect your position as government appointees and holders of the Commonwealth, you're going to have to act in a way that is deserving of our respect. The man that gave you your job has quite a reputation for inviting the kind of exploitation that KAW proposes. Appointing your buddies to positions of power must be fun, but when your buddies are all falling over each other to get a piece of the pie, it probably gets distracting. I imagine he was distracted when he appointed you even. But, like me, he trusts that you would never betray the trust of your naive constituents, those of us shamelessly begging you to consider our situation. The situation is, we live here. We didn't create this government, but we have to put up with it. Now, personally, I could do without it, but my grandpa and my dad both think that makes me ungrateful and young and maybe ignorant. But here's something interesting about being young today. I see a world that's changing for the better. In countries south of us, the kind of actions that KAW wants to inflict on us cause people to take to the streets and elect peasant farmers. I think their situation is more extreme, environmentally and socially. But environmentally, because we still have the luxury of abundant land and water. So abundant that companies with such leaky pipes continue to reap profits while nursing the cities with treated water and while diminishing all the water that doesn't even need treatment in the first place. But the rivers are less and less giving. More and more dams are being built, and whether you admit it or not, this drought is related to our past policies. The point is, you can continue to do your job as an appointee mandated by election campaign donors, pay them back, bringing more drought to our future, contributing to the inconvenient and unnecessary waste of our tax money, and no one will be surprised. If that's not keeping you awake at night, just fast forward a few decades more of this environmental nightmare that you're possibly standing to fill your pockets with, and ask yourself if it's worth what you'll lose, what you're in danger of losing now, by considering these shady business deals, which is not just clean water, but the respect of your children and us. Don't do your job as a political figure. Do your job as a defender of the people and the water that we all share. Please. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Okay. All right, well, that will conclude our hearing then. The commission very much appreciates those of you that have come out this evening. We especially appreciate those of you who have come one of the other two nights, if not all three. It's very refreshing for us to be able to hear from the public. Many times we get in these hearings and all we hear from are lawyers and expert witnesses, and sometimes that can get a little bit dry. No offense to any of the lawyers and expert witnesses, but we are public servants. You all pay our salaries, as I've said before, and it is very refreshing for us to be able to hear your all's comments. And I can assure you that we'll take your comments to heart. We very much look forward to the written comments that some of you have indicated you're going to send our way. We will consider the summaries of each of the 3 nights of public testimony or public comments that we have heard, and we will throw that into the mix and weigh that along with the evidence that we hear. Thank you very much. Please be careful on your travels back home. And Godspeed.